When I was 10, my mom got a new job, since shifting to Wisconsin. My dad bought this house in the suburbs, and the neighborhood seemed friendly until I met Mara. She happened to be our next-door neighbor, and my mom made friends with this woman pretty fast. She would come maybe twice a week, and they'd sit around the coffee table on our balcony and just talk. One day, I was on the balcony with them. I'm not sure why I was there, but knowing me, I was probably bored. So, we're sitting there, they're gossiping about who knows what when my mom got up to get some cake she had baked recently. I remained sitting at the table with Mara, and that's when my life changed forever. Mara was a spooky-looking woman. She was about 5 feet 6 inches, skinny, with long black hair, pearly white teeth, and big yellow eyes. Her eye color was so unnatural that it was unsettling to retain eye contact with her for more than 3 seconds. We sat quietly when all of a sudden, she turned towards me. A creepy grin appeared on her face. Her bright red lipstick with bright white teeth made her look even scarier. She started to tilt her head slowly from left to right, almost like a puppet. And then she spoke in the voice of an 8-year-old girl. "You ready to go now?" Her voice changed drastically with the disturbing body language combined. A cold shiver ran down my spine. What? You ready?" While saying this, she pulled a black rose out of her purse. That's it, she just took the weird-looking rose out and held it there. Her bony fingers, accompanied by long yellow nails, dangled in the air as she held the rose towards me. That was the first time I saw a black rose. I started sweating in fear when my mom came with the cake. "Here you go, Mara. Try this. I baked it yesterday." Mara, almost as if someone pushed a button on the remote control, switched back to her normal self, putting the black rose back into her purse without my mom noticing. I left the balcony creeped out, but I was 10 so I brushed it off quickly. I didn't know something way viler waiting for me at night. My room is on the first floor and my window is at a maybe 5-foot height. I was never an easily scared kid, but that night doesn't know why a weird feeling crowded my mind. I would turn in my bed constantly and look at the window after every 5 minutes. It was getting late and I started to doze off slowly. Before falling asleep, I decided to look into the window one last time. And there she was, standing in the freaking window, Mara. Just standing, looking directly at me. The moonlight fell on her, illuminating the same grin I saw on her face in the morning. Her red lipstick was smudged and stained her white teeth. I was paralyzed with fear. I often imagined what I'd do in situations like these, and I always had an escape plan for any hypothetical I threw at myself. But now, when our psycho neighbor was staring at me through my window at 3 a.m., just smiling, I was motionless. My mouth got dry, I got goosebumps, and I swear I could feel my room temperature drop to minus. After being like this for a minute straight that felt like an eternity, I finally gathered the courage to get up. I started walking towards the door with trembling feet while sweating like a dog. As I kept moving, Mara's evil yellow eyes followed me in a slow but cringing motion. Slowly, with the grin still there. Again, it was as if she were a puppet. I wanted to scream for my parents, but my voice somehow died that time. I raised my hand to grab the doorknob and froze. I froze because she moved. She lifted her skinny hand that held the same black rose. "I hope you're ready now." Hearing that same spine-chilling voice coming out of an adult woman, I was on my way to pee my pants. "Please, just leave me alone." As soon as I said that, she smiled disappeared and an angry frown took place. She nodded her head from left to right, gesturing no. Then, she grabbed the window pane. But every move she made was so slow, so mechanical. She started charging the window with both of her hands, and I realized she is trying to get in. I was so horrified witnessing this scene that I forgot to react for a while. The window slid open and she shoved her head in from the gap. I quickly realized the impending doom and grabbed my door to get away from my room. But based on my luck, the doorknob was stuck. I was freaking, panting in fear, trying my best to unlock the door, but it didn't buzz. While Mara was halfway through and screaming in that freaking child voice. "You're coming with me. You will be my final one." Suddenly, the door slammed open and I ran out of my room, screaming for my dad. My dad, being a light sleeper, jumped out of his bed and screams back at me, "What the hell is going on?" All I could muster to say was, "Mara, window." While Dad was putting his pants on, I ran back to my room, just to check if Mara was still there or not. You know, how in horror movies the person you saw is gone by the time witnesses come. Yeah, something similar happened, except I caught Mara leaving. There was a house some 100 yards away from mine, and it had one of those motion-activated lights. I saw the light turn on, and a glimpse of Mara disappearing behind that house. By the time Dad came in, she was nowhere to be seen. After much talking, he decided that it was just a nightmare and told me to call him only if someone physically comes into my room. "You and your imagination," he said, walking away. Needless to say, I got exactly 0 hours of sleep that night. The next morning, I woke up and found cop cars standing in front of Mara's house. People in our neighborhood gathered around her house. I walked outside and saw 2 paramedics talking out something in stretchers that were wrapped inside black plastic bags. Not understanding a thing and also not being able to spot Mara anywhere in that chaos, I stood there with a blank face. My mom and dad were talking to a cop, and when they saw me, they immediately came towards me. My mom was sobbing and my dad looked very serious. He sat me down and said, "Mara has been arrested this morning." After receiving a complaint from a woman in the adjacent neighborhood, the cops came for a routine check and found everything that they never expected from this woman. It is said that she was involved in witchcraft. The cops have found 4 dead bodies of kids aged from 6 to 9 years, buried in her backyard. With every corpse, she also buried a black rose. It seemed like she was running a satanic ritual for which she sacrificed these innocent lives. My mom hugged me in tears, and my dad apologized for not believing me last night. I could see the pain and trauma in my parents' eyes. They were thankful to God that I managed to survive. There is no doubt that I was her chosen 10-year-old who would have completed her ritual. That's why she said I was the final one, and that black rose symbolized death. Till today, I wake up at night covered in sweat with the fear that Mara is standing near my bed, tilting her head to the left, with the same evil grin and laughter, saying, "You're coming with me." This happened in recent times, and I'm still trying to recover from the trauma of it. I rented an apartment in a calm and quiet building. It was a 5-story building. People who lived there hardly talked to each other. The neighborhood where I live is also not in its best shape. Robberies, kidnappings often take place here. Being a bartender in a local pub doesn't suffice me with a good number of choices where I can afford to live somewhere expensive at this point. That's why this apartment was the only roof over my head. I lived on the 3rd floor. In the exact opposite apartment, lived a woman in her late 30s. Her name was Judy. She was a shy, good-looking woman, but everyone avoided her because of her ill-mannered mother. I have seen many cranky old people, but Mrs. Voorhees was like the cactus in a garden of flowers. She used to yell at Judy all day and all night. I could hear her shrill voice coming from their apartment. I didn't ask for a salad, I said I wanted soup. "Why didn't you wash my handkerchief? There's a yellow stain in it. How come you never hear me calling you? Is this how you repay your mother? I regret the day I had you. No wonder you'll end up alone." Being the neighbor next door, I felt pity for Judy. No matter how disgusting, Mrs. Judy took care of her at her old age. I could never hear a single word. If one came across her in the hallway, she would just walk past like a robot without noticing the other person. The only time this poor woman got some recluse is in the evening. Every evening from 6 to 7 p.m., Mrs. Voorhees went for her walk balancing her old body holding a wooden cane. She never missed going on these walks no matter how the weather changed. I remember, one time it was raining heavily and Judy told her not to go. She screamed, "Of course. Why would you want me to stay fit? You'll be happy if I die tomorrow. Then it'll be easy for you to snatch all my wealth." She wore her pink raincoat and walked away with her cane. That 1 hour, I watched television on mute. I never made any sound for that entire 1 hour as I wanted Judy to have some peace. I wanted her to have at least 1 hour from her entire day ere she can cherish the silence or cry silently. There was nothing anyone could do except watch Judy go through the same hell every day. One night, I came home from work. I was about to unlock my door when I heard Judy's voice behind me. "Thank you for being a quiet neighbor. It must be a horrible experience, living next door to us." Not at all. It's good with me. I am a heavy sleeper. I see. Before we could talk more, Mrs. Voorhees yelled from inside, "If you're done fooling around then finish the dishes." Judy's face became red with shame and she closed the door. This woman is such a pain in the ass. She's driving her daughter crazy. While I was thinking all this, their door opened once again and Mrs. Voorhees came out with her cane to go for her evening walk. She gave me a look of pure hatred and walked away. Things were going the same as usual when a robbery took place in one of the apartments on the first floor. It didn't shock me though because that's how the neighborhood was, like I said already. Out of tension and panic, I decided to install a doorbell camera just to be on the safe side. While attaching that, I came across Judy many times and told her to do the same. She gave me a sad smile and said, "My life is already ruined, nothing else can make that worse." I exhaled a deep breath hearing this and Judy went inside locking her door behind. No one would have interfered in her life if not for this terrible incident happened. After installing the doorbell camera, I developed a new habit. I don't know why. I liked keeping an eye on the screen and monitoring the movements on the other side of my door. Because of the camera, I could now hear Mrs. Voorhees's voice even more clearly. Her yelling and cussing were more prominent to my ears. It was a rainy evening, and I could hear Mrs. Voorhees arguing with Judy about going on her usual walks. Suddenly, she became quiet and I saw Judy come out of the apartment sobbing. She stood in front of my door whimpering badly. Even though I watched her suffer like this, I didn't open up the door because that would have been more embarrassing for her. I stood silently and watched her on my screen, then she went back to her apartment again. I sat on my couch and expected to see that old witch leaving for her walk after putting her daughter through hell like usual. 5 minutes went by, an hour went by and she didn't come out. I got up to go to bed thinking maybe she won't go out today in this storm. I might have taken a step when I heard the muffled sound of the door gets closed. I turned around and saw the screen. There she was. Mrs. Voorhees dressed in her same pink raincoat holding the cane in her hand. Show a person dressed in a pink raincoat holding a cane going out, but don't show the face, let the audience think it was Mrs. Voorhees. I went to bed after switching off the light. Since that night a few changes took place in my daily life. The sound of argument and fight reduced slowly. Mrs. Voorhees stopped behaving like a cruel witch that she was all of a sudden. Every evening she went to her walk wearing that raincoat and holding that cane without screaming at Judy. Judy's face also lit up as her life finally sunk into harmony. One time I met her in the hallway and she smiled at me. That was the first time I saw her smiling. Don't know why it felt a bit creepy. Her wide eyes surrounded by dark circles sparkled as she showcased her pale white teeth. "Hello, Samuel." "Hi, Judy. How are you?" "I'm good. Finally good after a long time." I had talked with Ma, told her she needs to cut me some slack if we are going to live under the same roof. Luckily, she agreed. "Oh, I'm happy for you. Let me know if you need something." She walked away with a smile and I went on my way. Days went by and I couldn't help but think how Mrs. Voorhees became this calm, quiet person all of a sudden. Every time I watched her going to the walk, I wondered what could bring this change to her. I would have wondered this if not one day I barged inside their apartment. It was a Saturday afternoon and I saw Judy leave in the morning. I was making my lunch when I heard the smoke alarm go off in her apartment. I rushed to her door and started banging on it. I rang the doorbell calling out Mrs. Voorhees's name several times, but she didn't open the door. Hearing my scream and the alarm, the landlord and 2 other tenants came to my floor. We all thought the old woman must have fainted in the smoke, so without giving much thought we broke the door and entered the apartment. A tea kettle was placed on the stove and somehow Judy forgot to turn off the heat. The smoke from it made the alarm go off like crazy. We brought the situation under control and started to look for Mrs. Voorhees. As soon as we opened the bedroom door, all of our hearts skipped a beat. Mrs. Voorhees's upper body was lying on an armchair. Her throat was slit open and she had been dead for quite a while now. The lower portion of her body was missing. It was a horrible sight to witness for any human being. The reeking smell of her rotten body where maggots have started to crawl sat right in front of us. I rushed to an apartment and vomited on the kitchen sink. The smell was unbearable. Our landlord called the cops and arrested Judy from the nearby grocery shop. It scared me to sleep when I realized that rainy night her tolerance limit gave up and she murdered her monster mother. She knew very well about my installation of a doorbell camera. She couldn't get rid of the corpse directly as my camera will record the footage, so she came up with a more sinister plan. Every night she started to chop off a certain amount of her flesh and dressed up as Mrs. Voorhees went out to get rid of that. That's why I could never see her face. All this time it was Judy taking away her dead mother's body part, pretending to be her. Everything was going according to her plan. She had her perfect alibi, that was my doorbell camera footage, which was enough to prove Mrs. Voorhees was, when in reality her corpse was rotting inside her bedroom. I was there in the courtroom when the judge sentenced her to life imprisonment for the murder of her mother. She stood in the room silently the entire time. When the cops came to take her away, she looked at me and said, "You know what, Samuel? I should have eaten her after cutting her up. I should have eaten her up right away." Thanks for watching. If you would like to submit a personal story of yours for the chance to have it narrated on this channel, please send your story to the email in the description. I would love to know, down in the comments, what story was your favorite. Don't forget to join me on Instagram and TikTok, and I will see you all soon with another creepy video.